Good morning, everybody. So for those of you who are here in the sanctuary, thank you for coming. And for those of you watching a live stream, thanks for being here. It's a very important topic. And Stephen Ministry is really proud to be presenting Deborah Germain. She is the project manager for the Alzheimer's Association for Palm Beach County. The program is being hosted by our Stephen Ministry, which is an important ministry here at the St. Gregory Episcopal Church that serves not only our parishioners, but people in our community as well. And it really is a ministry of listening. So for people who are going through a difficult time, be that a divorce, job loss, illness, grief, Alzheimer's and dementia, many of the things that interrupt our lives, and sometimes we just need somebody to walk alongside us. It is a confidential process that the Stephen Ministry provides, pairing up parishioners with your peers. It's a layperson to layperson ministry that's really about listening, and it is in complete confidence. And the Stephen ministers do receive training before they go into these caring relationships, which last about 6 months to a year at a time. Anyway, Deborah, handing the mic to you, and thanks again.
Well, thank you so much for that amazing introduction, and thank you so much for having me. I attended the service this morning, and it was amazing. I could already see that you guys touched the lives of your community and the amazing people. So I wanted to come and talk to you all about Alzheimer's. And unfortunately, as you guys have mentioned, Alzheimer's is not a fun topic. It is something people are still wary of. It is a disease that we don't like to talk about until we have it. Or even after that, we still don't want to talk about it. So this is going to be a nice casual discussion. We're going to open it up. I'm going to talk about what it is, what it isn't, signs, symptoms, the resources in the area. But first, I want to open the floor to ask you guys what you know, or maybe what some questions you guys already have regarding the topic.
Start over again? No, you got it. How to not get them off track, to get to be on their track, and to not to, in the beginning it was so difficult. I wanted her to be speaking reality as I saw reality. But when I learned that I could just listen to her and let her be, she was so less anxious, and I became less anxious. And that's a lesson that I remember learning early on that I've valued ever since.
My wife is in memory care now, and I was the caretaker for a long time. And I'd like to know about the progression of it. What should I expect after this? And when to say goodbye?
Good morning. My name's Hugh. I'm part of the Stephen Ministry crew here in St. Gregory's. I've been doing this not just at this church, but another church in Del Rey for about 20 years. And for those of you not familiar with Stephen Ministry, it is a giving, sharing, listening human service. And I find that whatever I give to my care receivers, I get back 3 or 4 times. My current care receiver is also suffering from Alzheimer's, and I've been caring for him for about 1.5 years. So always eager to learn what you have to share with us.
My name is Andrea Chang, and we have a current member whose wife has been with the church for a while. And we have a current member whose wife was in the church for a while, and she suffered from Alzheimer's, and she stopped coming, and he's a member of the Brothers, and I felt bad for him. I said, well, I'll sit with her one evening so you can come to church, come to the brothers' meeting. And luckily someone warned me as to what to expect. She said, there's something called sundowning, and it's not the same person that you knew. Her personality changes. So I went in, and I said hi to her, and her husband said, bye, Marian, I'll see you later. And she punched him in the stomach. And I was gonna give her a hug, but I realized you can't. She's no longer the same. I don't think the mic's on. Yeah. And I stayed with her for like 3 hours, and she played card, and I just make sure, just like a kid, you watch to make sure she doesn't get in trouble, locked all the doors, and I moved the cards from the counter, because she would stand and play with them at the kitchen counter, so I moved them to a table, sat with her, and that's what we did. But she didn't recognize me, and... A little bit louder so we can hear you. Okay, I'm not a speaker, so... All right. She can't hear you either. All right. This is the first time I'm speaking publicly to anybody, so thank you. That's my experience with someone with Alzheimer's. All right.
Speak up. Hello. What do you want me to say here? My name is Anita. I took care of my husband who had brain cancer, and it presented just as Alzheimer's. So he lost all track of like what day it was, what time it was, mostly what day it was, and it's much of a struggle to take care of somebody who has that disease. And at first I thought he had Alzheimer's, but then it turned out that it was a brain tumor, which the symptoms were just the same. But I do have to say, it's pretty horrible to live with somebody who's your husband and forgets that you're his wife, and doesn't recognize you, doesn't know who you are. And when you ask who his wife is, he goes back to his first wife, like 30 years ago or something. Susan, well. So it's quite a struggle. I can't think of what else was, I don't know. It's quite awful to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's.
I'm in a sort of unusual position here in that I'm quite familiar with the disease entity from a clinical standpoint. I happen to be an MD. What I'm interested in is what the community has to offer in terms of liaison or speakership or something like this. So I'm here to learn.
Well, I'm a pastor, I'm a priest, and this subject, I'm really interested in this subject to say, in case, something, happens, someone, I have to pastoral to someone, so what I can do, things, like that. So I want, to learn a little bit, about that.
Hi, I'm Linda Snow. My sister lives in South Carolina, and she has Alzheimer's or dementia, and my brother-in-law has no idea what to do to help her out. I want to know what kind of services they probably have in South Carolina and how to connect him with them. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. But I didn't want to close the circle. Okay, well, this is, okay. My name is Camlin. And I have quite a lot of experience with Alzheimer's and dementia. A friend of mine's mother had Alzheimer's, and she got very mean and aggressive, and so I lived 3 years through the worst of his, her getting thrown off planes and pinching people and accusing people of stealing stuff because she's hidden it herself but doesn't remember where it is, and forgetting her daughter's name. And okay, that's Alzheimer's. My mother had dementia. She was a vegetable for 9 years. That was very hard to see. Part of that had to do with when she came back from England. She arrived in this country, and the doctors immediately took her off the drugs that she was doing well with, because she had a heart condition. In England, put her on other drugs. Within 6 months, she was on 20 different drugs. I came back from South Africa, and I found out my mom's on all these drugs, and I'm fighting with the family to get her off. Eventually, they got her off of a lot of them, but I believe from the multiple different drugs, everyone having a side effect, that they put her on another drug, I think that brought on the dementia, and many people think that. And then I also professionally cared for 2 dementia patients, both very different. One had hallucinations and walked in his sleep, but sometimes, and his wife was the typical Alzheimer's, threatened, scared, nice 1 minute, nasty the next. And now I'm associated with a veteran who I was helping for a period of time, and he's got early stages of dementia. So the reason I decided to sit in here was just to hear if I could hear something different than what I already know, or also to hear what's available so that I know where to direct people when I come in contact with them.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing your stories, your insight, your needs, and definitely sitting here and trying to get to know more. So the biggest core I've noticed right now is you guys have been asking about resources. So I'm part of the Alzheimer's Association. We are a nonprofit that fights to have a day with no Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So we have caregiver support groups. We have early stage support groups. Early stage support groups are for people that are newly diagnosed with the disease. It's for the patient plus the caregiver together, to sit with other caregivers and patients to learn from each other and go through this journey together. We also have educational programs like this one, where we go over understanding Alzheimer's and dementia, healthy living for the brain and body, which is a risk reduction program. For example, it focuses on nutrition, fitness, cognitive thinking, social engagement, ways to reduce your risk of obtaining the disease later on. We also have effective communication strategies, which goes over communication, not just for someone who has Alzheimer's, but also, in society, in the community. And then we also have the 10 warning signs, which goes over what to look for, what to worry for. I have so many people that call me. They're like, Deborah, I forgot where my car is at Publix. Should I be worried? So don't worry. You don't need to be worried. It happens to me like once or twice a week. It gets busy. Some things are normal aging. Unfortunately, you're not going to walk as quick or think as quick as you did when you were 16. We'd love that, but it doesn't work the same way. Sometimes it will take you a bit longer to think about something or move. That is normal. We have to give each other grace for that. But there are some things we forget that causes us to think of a question, or why did I just forget that? For example, if you've been working at the same place for 20 years and you forgot how to get to work, that's something that should make you worry and go to get to the next step. So caregiver support groups in the area. We actually have one of them at the May Volan Center, which is on Palmetto Road, not far from here. I also have flyers in my bag that I'll give out to you guys so you could personally take them with you. We also have one in Delray Beach at Brain Matters Research. It's on West Atlantic Boulevard. That is also a research site that does clinical trials, and also has an early stage group as well there. So a little bit about the disease. So Alzheimer's and dementia are 2 separate things. Dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. There is Alzheimer's, Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal dementia, and vascular dementia. Each one is different. However, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. About 80% of Americans that have dementia have Alzheimer's. However, you could also have mixed dementia. So So you could have Alzheimer's with vascular dementia and so forth. For example, you mentioned that,
My mother got a virus in England that attacks the heart, and it feels like a flu. So if anybody has a flu for a couple of days, and that you get to the doctor, because it attacks the weakest part of the heart. In her case, it was the right ventricle. So because of that, she was on Coumadin and Dilantin, and then one other drug. So when the doctors changed it here, then all those other drugs, because of the side effects, like depression, then a pill for depression, then a pill for this, that created, I believe, the dementia that she ended up with. Does that make sense?
The question is whether the RSV vaccine prevents vascular dementia.
Unfortunately, there is no preventative vaccine, measure, or anything that could prevent dementia as a whole. A lot of vitamins like Prevagen and other things, people are like, okay, it boosts my memory, it's gonna help me. None of that is clinically backed or proven. Because if it was true, your doctor would tell you to be taking it, and your doctor hasn't been telling you to take it. So, for example, vascular dementia has a lot of seizures. Frontal temporal has more naturism. For example, you're talking to the trees, you say the birds are singing, different things like that. Lewy body is also more long-term. It's also the most expensive dementia. But also you could have the mixed form, like I mentioned, two at the same time. The most important thing is going to get tested. For example, get that memory screening annually. After the age of 60, they recommend for you to take it every year because they're gonna measure how far you fall into the scale. And all memory screenings are completely free. They take about 30 minutes, and they're just gonna tell you, okay, you're fine, or hey, let's check a couple of things out. So unfortunately, your primary doctor cannot give you a memory screening or a test for Alzheimer's. You need to go to a neurologist. And I know a lot of people, they're like, Deborah, I love my primary doctor. If that guy tells me to go left, I'm going left. I don't want to see anybody else. I completely understand. However, neurologists are the only ones trained and that has a specific comprehensive test to see if you have it. Another way to get tested if you have Alzheimer's is a PET scan. However, that test is $5,000, and it's just better to take the comprehensive route. So some research centers you guys have next to you in the area is that you do have the Comprehensive Brain Health Center that is on Camino Street in the West, I believe, right here in Boca. You also have Brain Matters Research in Del Rey. And then in Boynton, you have the Palm Beach Memory Disorder Clinic on West Boynton Beach Boulevard. Another thing the Alzheimer's Association offers is we offer a 24/7 helpline that you could call, and it's also confidential. So you could ask them for where's the nearest memory screening, where's the nearest neurologist, can I have the phone number, can I have the email, can I have the address, I don't want to go longer than 5 miles. We'll be able to talk to you about all of that and email it to you. We won't ask for your phone number, we won't ask for your address, they only ask for your zip code. That's the only way they identify you. That way you're able to get your information confidentially, because also, it's a very sensitive topic. No one likes to admit, that they're losing their memory, but also no one likes the lack of control. Because, unfortunately, as you mentioned, Alzheimer's, it's not one shoe fits all. Some people, they may go through the 6 to 8 years after diagnosis. Some people may take them 4, some people may take them 10. It fluctuates a lot.
Do you find that when, like, for example, my father got it at the very end of his life, and I noticed when my mother had her driver's license taken away, or her car taken away from her, they never took her driver's license, they took her car away from her, she started feeling loss of independence. And then when they banned the kitchen from her, and because she left the stove on or whatever, she had difficulty with that. I know with my father, he kind of started to give up after he lost his independence.
And that's a big thing, because you understand your loved one can't do the same things you would like them to do anymore. For example, if you leave home, some people, they remove the car battery out of the car. They hide the keys, they unplug the oven because you worry for their health. But also the thing is, the patient, the person living with Alzheimer's or that form of dementia, they don't understand what's happening to them. They understand there's a change in their house, their relationships, but they don't understand that it's something from them. I always tell everyone that when someone is going through Alzheimer's, it's the death of the old person that they were previously, and you need to learn the new person that they're becoming. It's also a secondary childhood. You know, they're doing puzzles, they're painting, they're drawing. And as a caregiver, it is very stressful. Typically, the patient outlives the caregiver. And I know you're probably thinking, then what happens to the patient? Of course, no, that's the biggest thing we talk about, because caregivers need that support. You need to have the safe place for you. Please take time to go to those caregiver support groups in the area. They're like-minded people. They are spouses, they are daughters, they are sons, they are uncles, nieces, ex-husbands, ex-wives, is everyone involved. So everyone has a similar background and support. But also you need that 1 hour, an hour and a half, or even 2 hours to talk about what's going on. Because also the guilt is very intense. Some people are like, you know, we've been together for 35 years. How can I not take care of my spouse? If I get upset, I feel like I'm a terrible person. You guys are not trained, unfortunately, to take care of someone with Alzheimer's in a form of dementia. None of us typically are trained for that. You, of course, know to love that person. You know that person better than the back of your hand, but some things are just out of your control. So you mentioned the facility. A lot of people ask, okay, I'm keeping them at home. I'm not moving them. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm never going to let them leave this home. However, as they progress, when they can't do the 4 stages of care, for example, bathing, eating, clothing, feeding, you're not able to do any support besides that. For example, I was speaking to a woman, she was about 67, her husband was 86. He was, you know, a bigger, stronger gentleman than herself, and he came to that point where he's no longer to move or get out of bed. She was trying to pick him up, and then he fell over, but also sometimes you mentioned, you know, sweet one day, upset the next, and he started screaming. He wasn't getting physical with her, but, you know, he was getting a bit more aggressive, and she started to get, you know, worried. But she's like, you know, I love him, he knows me, you know, he's not typically like this. When it gets to that point, there's nothing for you to do. You have to evaluate your options. And a lot of people ask me, okay, like what's too soon, what's too quick, where do I even start? You never want to wait for the last minute with anything. For example, we know our loved ones. We never like to admit when we're wrong or when we can't really do something. It's the human nature. Patients are very good at hiding what they're going through. For example, let's say you're driving to the supermarket. There'll be a lot of excuses. Oh, you know, I'm just trying to test to see how you're doing. You know, I know where I'm going. Or maybe they'll even ask you, hey, why don't you drive today? I don't feel like it. Or I have to do a call or to send an email. Little things that you won't think of, but it starts to add up. Or maybe it'll be like their nephew comes over. Hi, Jim. His name is Bob. Oh, you know, I confuse you guys sometimes. It happens. Some little things will happen, and you need to make sure to be very aware. That's why going to those annual memory screenings are so important, because if you think about it, if you're able to go today to a neurologist, get tested, you may be able to get into a clinical trial today that gives you an extra 5 years of your life. Who wouldn't want an extra 5 years with their family, their loved ones, their community, their church? Yeah.
She's having memory issues, but she's also in denial. And it's impossible for someone to get help if they're in denial. So, and her family would like to help her, but she has moments, well, 90% of the time she's lucid, but she'll forget, like, to come to church. And when you'll say, hi, where were you? She's, oh, I was away, because she forgot, you know.
I'll share. I'm 82 years old, and I guess at this age we all have like fears of dementia. So if I forget something, say I forgot where I put something, or just, have a moment of cloudiness, I always worry, is this the start of dementia or Alzheimer's? And so I just want to ask you, at 82, if you forget where you put your keys, does that mean you're headed for dementia?
Thank you. In terms of that, if you forget where your keys are, that's normal aging. If you forget that word, if you remember within 24 hours, that's okay. Because sometimes, like I said, it takes your brain a second to do it. Sometimes you're doing laundry and you're like, oh, I remember that word I forgot earlier this morning. If it's been, 2 days and you still can't remember it, like I said, that's something to be slightly concerned about. Keys, sometimes it happens, especially let's say you have guests coming over, you're doing a dinner, you're running the Bible study. Sometimes you're doing 20 things in a span of 4 minutes. Sometimes things get jumbled up. But there, like I said, some slight irregularities that you just look at. For example, if you put maybe your phone in the back of the fridge, it happens, but that's a warning sign. If you forget, what your son's name is, the warning sign. But if you forget who your son is, that's a flashing red light. But like I said, we don't want to get to the flashing red lights, because what we also know as a human, that when it becomes crunch time or a moment of stress, we end up making a quick decision, or typically a decision we may regret or maybe is not thought through very well. For example, I speak to a lot of people that are in crisis care. So for example, they're like, hey, I'm moving my loved ones right now. I only have like a week or so, it's just too much. You're not able to make a decision you feel happy with in terms of the care of your loved one in a week or two. And typically when you place them, you'll be thinking, did I really just do that to them? Or I'm not happy, or you're like, I don't like this place, I don't like the staff. The minute that your loved one gets diagnosed or even starts screening, if I was you, just start visiting a couple places, interview the staff, talk to the patients, see what's going on, have 3 top choices for yourself personally that if it progresses very quickly, because like I said, there's no definitive timeline. It's 6 to 8 years after diagnosis. You have your number 1, 2, and 3 choices ready to go. You also know your power of attorney, get that set up, especially for some people that already has children or is a second or third marriage, making sure you have that definitively already, making sure assets and everything. Because sometimes what happens is things progress without you even knowing. I had someone come in and they told me they had to recently call in some support for her father. So he went to TD Bank and he withdrew $1,000. He did that every single day for about a month and a half. So they finally flagged him. They were like, sir, you've been coming in every single day depositing $1,000. What's going on? And withdrawing $1,000. And he was like, what are you talking about? I was just in here today. And he was like, sir, we have your timeline. We have your license stamps. You've been withdrawing $1,000 every single day. And he had no idea. He completely forgot inside his car. So something like that, the staff was able to notify them and let them know right away. But you wouldn't have even thought about it in the moment. You just think it's a regular day. That man's probably, doing his normal actions, Especially, we sometimes have our snowbirds, some people that may be primary residences in New York, Chicago, California. So I've spoken to people also about transferring. For example, I spoke to this woman, her parents were in Chicago, she moved to Florida, and she was trying to relocate them down here because they both are going through the early stages of Alzheimer's. And, being a child, well, the children of your parents, no matter if you're 45, 50, you are still their child. If you tell them like, hey, mom, this is better for you, they're like, nope, you're not gonna tell me what to do. So I helped her work on a Chicago plan, so a Chicago neurologist, a Chicago memory screen, a Chicago placement option, and then a Florida version. So I was like, hey, if you have to relocate and go to Chicago with them while they're getting ready to go to move, you at least know they have a caregiver support group or OAC support group right there for them until you get where you need to be. Unfortunately, when you're going through this process, you need to think of 20 things or plan that out so later on you don't have to get to that point.
So Deborah, I think that the Alzheimer's Association helps individuals figure out those different resources and opportunities, correct? I think this is working again. Tell us about how to get started with that and what are the things that we could expect.
Of course. Yes, okay, let me take a second and pass that out.
So, and we all understand how, there are really two issues with any kind of Alzheimer's and dementia. So one is the patient, but the other is the caregiver. So many of you have really talked about how difficult that can really be, and to know that the caregiver is often predeceasing the one with dementia only because it is such a stressful job, and the caregivers need as much support as the care receivers receive.
Give me 1 second. Quick question. I'm going to hand out the support group flyers. Is anyone interested in Del Rey, Boca, or Parkland support groups? Okay, Boca support groups.
Just a short statement. The name Alzheimer's came from a physician who was not a practicing clinician. He was what we used to call in the old days prosectors, guys who dissect the body after they die to see if they could correlate clinical findings with what he finds at autopsy. Now, Dr. Alzheimer is one of those. And what brought the whole thing to his attention is that these shriveled, shrunk up brains of people that women, predominantly women, more Alzheimer's in women than in men. And he wondered whether he could correlate these shrunken brains with the behavior of the patient before they died. And that's how the correlation started. But to answer your question, if you've forgotten where you put your keys, that could be just old age. If you look at your keys and say, what are these? You have a problem.
Then you have a problem.
You have a problem. But the need is to get an examination done by a neurophysiologist who could tell you what's going on with your behavior. And more importantly, I'm interested in support groups in various areas because I find there's a great need for that in our community around here. So with that, I'll pass this back.
We will also have a set of these in the church office for anybody who might be viewing online and who would like to also receive some support materials about how to get connected with the Alzheimer's Association.
Well, what I wanted to know was, in the case where I was a caregiver for a husband and wife, he was a principal of a school and she was a school teacher. The reason I mention that is because he's the one with the hallucinations, and he had you would not have known that he was ever a principal of a school. He had deteriorated at that point. And his wife was another story. But I was taking care of them in their home, and I had a nurse that came in to do the showering. I did not do the showering. I did the cooking and the organizing and taking them wherever they had to go. In my mother's case and my father's case, we had actually nurses that came in for certain checkups, but they had 24-hour care within our home. So maybe people might be interested in how they can get help. I know at the end of my mother's life, we had to bring hospice in, and they were there for quite some time because it was really overwhelming at that point. because of her condition. And like I said, she was a vegetable at the end, which was really sad, except for I did come back from South Africa at one point, and it was the third time she died. And she was blue. And it took me 2 days to get back. And I remember kissing her, and then she started to get pink, like the color of your dress. And she slowly, and she came back, and then she came to full cognizance for about 5 days, and then she faded out again and never ever came back to, but 5 days, totally clear-minded, everything. It was unbelievable. Everybody's jaw just dropped. I guess she had a lot to say to me before I left again. So maybe you could share that with people?
Of course, and thank you so much for sharing that. So what you said is so impactful. So with our resources on our community resource finder, let's say you wanted to find a home health care agency to come in, spend a couple hours, so you could go to work, bathe, whatever you need to do. You could put in the zip code and it'll show proximity. It'll also give you the address, phone number, and email. So we don't personally recommend any place. We always like to give you options to make that independent guess. But also, unfortunately, every day the disease is still progressing. It never stops. Like when you mention someone has a good day, they think like, oh, maybe it's turning around. Maybe it's turning a corner. Maybe it's healing, Unfortunately, it is not. That's why we always tell people to make sure to just prepare, speak to them, take that time with them, share that moment. But it also takes an average of 3 caregivers per one person living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, 3 people. And typically, a lot of people leave work, they do it full time, and like I said, you outlive the person living, or by the time your patient passes away, it's been maybe 20, 30 years you've been out of work. So insurance, it depends. It really depends on your individual. Of course. So what I definitely recommend is there's some long-term care insurance that a lot of people, you don't think of in the moment. You're like, I'm healthy, my bones are strong, I won't need it. But long-term insurance does cover, long-term care. Unfortunately, with the prices of some facilities right now in long-term memory cares, let's say your house retails for $450,000. I'm giving an approximate. It may last you 2 years in one of those facilities. But of course it varies. I recommend going onto the 24/7 helpline, speaking to them. They have world-class trained clinicians with backgrounds. They've been in the system before. They'll be able to give you a little bit of insight in terms of the proper routes to go. And sometimes we do maybe have some resources that may be able to give you maybe a discount or something with some services.
It can run into the millions. I know it did with my mother. So.
Suppose I put a group together, just an interested group. They probably have not had any contact with anyone with the diagnosis, but they're worried about older or elderly people in their community. Is there a charge for having one from your group come out? So.
That is an amazing question. So we are a nonprofit. Everything we do is free. Like me coming down here, completely free. Doing the educational program, giving the information and resources, we're grant funded. So when I asked you guys to write your first and last name, that counts who we serve in the community. You will never get a charge for anything, even the information, and all of your information is always protected. We never ask for addresses, emails, or anything. We do have our Walk to End Alzheimer's, which actually Boca will be November 12th. I have some flyers, I'll give them out at the end. That is our separate fundraising that we do. We are the largest supporter of research for Alzheimer's and dementia after the US and China. We're number 3. So our caregiver support groups, if you guys are interested, we could host one at the church, depending on the amount of people that are interested. It's for Alzheimer, other forms of dementia, and any MCI. So MCIs has been common right now. This was on the Palm Beach Centennial, talking about the growing number of cases lately. So 80% of the people that are diagnosed with an MCI, a mild cognitive impairment, actually will lead to some form of dementia. So personally for us, we don't, in terms of hosting a support group there, or in terms of, so we could do educational programs there, but we currently in Palm Beach County don't host any support groups at facilities anymore, just because we've noticed they close 6 months after they open, and a lot of people feel as if they go to a facility, it's showing where they may have to end up putting their loved one in, and it kind of gives them into a negative headspace. Because, yes, of course. I could always host an educational program, give out resources and information there, yes, of course. Sure. Yes. So with our educational programs like the one we first hosted, we did understanding Alzheimer's, dementia, and then the 10 warning signs. So we went over what the disease is, what it isn't, the actual medications that are up to date right now, the signs and symptoms. So whatever interested party, I go to churches, I go to senior centers, I go out to Belglade and Pahokee. Anyone that's interested to hear about it, I go to it. Especially we also do education in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole as well, because South Florida is very diverse. And unfortunately, Alzheimer's, it doesn't affect everyone the same way. Unfortunately, 2/3 of Alzheimer patients are actually women. They have a higher chance of getting it compared to men. And also, if you're Hispanic, you have 1.5 times likely more of a chance to get it compared to someone that's Caucasian. And if you're African American, you're twice as likely to get it compared to someone that's Caucasian. They've been looking at diet, genetics, lifestyle. It hasn't been really confirmed in terms of it. There has been research on it, but a mixture of things, and also lifestyle. But unfortunately, age is it could be genetics. Age is the biggest factor and contributor of this disease. After that comes family history, genetics, and lifestyle. All 4 of those contribute, but there's not like a cut and dry reason I could tell you African Americans get this because of this and vice versa. But we do have more stigma in those communities as well. And unfortunately, when we are doing the clinical trials and research, typically there is predominantly not a wide mixture of different races in terms of clinical trials. No, so the pure 100% way to get it would be an autopsy. Unfortunately, all of us, we're living, we're kicking, so that's not an option. A PET scan is another way, but also with the amount of radiation it takes to get there, it's just better to take the comprehensive test from your neurologist and also not have to spend $5,000. Yeah. So with Alzheimer's, how it actually affects it is that there is amyloid plaque buildup in the brain. Picture that beautiful tree you guys had in the courtyard. I don't remember which courtyard it was when I first came here. So the brain, you have the spinal fibers there stretching all over the body. So Alzheimer's kind of comes in and chops the branch. That tree is no longer able to access that part of the brain. So for example, the one that told you to swallow at the very last stages, you're no longer able to swallow food with the disease. You're not able to reach it anymore, and vice versa. No, because that's going to be deeper. And an MRI just shows maybe, for example, brain growth swelling, if there's a tumor. This is more plaque. It's definitive. So that's why you just do comprehensive. So they've been trying to do some treatments. Unfortunately, medication just treats symptoms right now. There's no definitive cure. There are some clinical trials online. You could go on Trial Match that shows what's been working on, but nothing approved by the FDA as of this moment. So that is our 24/7 helpline nationally. They will connect you to someone in this area, but also I can give out my personal business card if you guys are ever interested. Of course, I'm gonna pass it. Yeah, I have a stack of them. Let me grab them.
Yeah, it's a
You mentioned something about Michigan, and I know you mentioned your sister in North Carolina, right? So we are national. So what you could do is call that 1-800 number, say I want to connect it to the Michigan chapter, the North Carolina chapter, right there. It's on all of your flyers and on the bottom of all your reading material as well. And just say you want to speak to the program manager of that area. There'll be another one of me there that covers the county in various areas. And like I said, we'll get you the exact number, connect you with a neurologist, memory screening, information. So at least you have a contact here in Florida and then over there, and they'll have someone they could speak to 24/7.
We'll have all this information, extra copies in the church office for anybody who's listening online and wants to follow up. The Alzheimer's Association is an invaluable resource for somebody going through this disease. It's very confusing, very alarming for some people. Again, as Deborah pointed out, a lot of stigma attached to it. And I think it's all about having an early recognition and getting as much help as possible and kind of thinking ahead, because it does go through stages, it does continue to devolve over time, and better to be prepared for whatever's next.
I wanted to thank you guys so much for attending this discussion. I know there was so much to cover, so if you guys want to come back for a follow-up talk again, you guys can also pre-submit questions, and I could be able to cover them more in depth as well. And if you guys are interested, I could always invite other community partners, for example, maybe someone that specializes in each realm, so you guys can have more of an in-depth discussion and have, you know, like you said, all those resources together on a panel in terms of it to get that information. Unfortunately, Alzheimer's is a disease where most people assume they're alone because it's something people don't talk about. Typically, after diagnosed, those same friend groups that you're around, they typically take a step back because they're not able to have the same conversations or know exactly what to say. You're not alone in this. Attending those caregiver support groups shows you a whole network of other men and women who are going through the same thing in another community. And please come out to the Boca Walk. I have some flyers for that. It's in the middle of November, I believe, to just see everyone. There are patients there. Those are caregivers. There are people in the whole realm that are just coming together fighting for a cause. So they are the backbone of everything we do, and we're just fighting for everyone.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for being here. And then just as a reminder, that what Stephen Ministry does is we don't do this kind of level of work. But what we are there for is if you're going through a tough time and you just feel like you need a little support, personal support, spiritual support, that there are parishioners who are trained to, in all confidence, to be there by your side. And if you're interested more in finding somebody either for yourself or for someone in your life who you feel could really benefit from Stephen Ministry, let me know, let Father Andrew know, and we will start that process going for you. So again, thank you for our online viewers, and again, we'll have copies of all this information in the church office. If you even call the church office, we're happy to mail those out to you or discuss them further. Thanks so much.
My sister has vascular dementia. She had a fall and hit her head a few years back. If I call, she knows it's me. But you have to go back way in the childhood, and she gets really repetitive. Probably by the time I hang up, she didn't know I called. So I just wondered, is it progressive? It's gone.
So unfortunately, it is always moving, always growing. There are some instances where it may come back in terms of that quick second, that quick day. Some people, I believe the woman in here mentioned that her husband only remembers his first wife. There's a certain period of time where there may be a cutoff. For example, you may be saying, I want to wait for like my brother to come home when his brother passed away 30, 40 years ago, and he's still, getting his lunch ready for school. It's a secondary childhood in terms of it, where that's kind of what they hold on to and remember. But also as a caregiver, you know, that repetitiveness, you learn to work with them and think about it, because it's also frustrating as well, because, you know, you want them to be the same way they've always been, but, you know, you're becoming a stranger. But also, you know, you're learning and loving a new person and spending time with them and learning what they like to do. For example, you know, they love their puzzles. You buy them a new puzzle when you see them. Maybe you buy them a new little sparkly thing that, you know, they've been liking to say, like, keep on. It's definitely connecting and relearning, but it takes time, it takes support. That's why, you know, you lean on your community, you tell everyone what's going on, but also never be alone during this process. It's very easy, you know, take a step back, stay more with your family, but you have a whole community that loves and supports you guys. It's visible, so.
I just wanted to share, when my mom was in hospice, she had dementia. And what we found, the thing that really brought her the most joy on a daily basis was music and singing. So I think that the memory care and getting into these support groups also help you to find different ways that you might be able to connect. It must be so difficult by phone. I hear your sadness in that, because you're kind of closing into one manner of communication that is very difficult. And I hope that in other parts of your sister's life that she might be having some connection through food, through music. I mean, I remember when my mom was, our neighbor had come over. She did not remember her name, and she had these moments of lucidity. She just woke up one day, and Ramo was sitting next to her, and my mother turned and looked at her, and she said, "Oh, I like you." And it was just such a beautiful moment. So these moments do happen. I think this is where our faith kicks in. It doesn't, you know?
Definitely, that is a big thing. You just said your faith kicks in. I know sometimes a lot of patients go and they'll sit with their loved one and be like, "Can you read me that psalm again?" or "Sing me my favorite hymn." And that music, that sound, that memory. For example, some people, let's say you have that song, maybe it was a song you played at your wedding. If you play that, it does trigger some memory sometimes. So finding their favorite things, doing it together, but also never forget to tell the person that you love them. You give them a hug, you squeeze their hand, because they remember those things. They feel that affection. They feel that something has changed, but you saying that you love them even when you're upset or that you're frustrated means the world, because like I said, time is not guaranteed with this disease. If you tell them you love them every single day, it makes a difference, it makes an impact. But I want to say thank you guys so much for attending. This is the first big step. Here is admitting that you need help, resources, or just doing it for someone else, being an advocate. So the Alzheimer's Association, we offer volunteering, advocacy, our walk to end Alzheimer's, which is going to be for Boca, Sunday, November 12th at 8 a.m. at the Sunset Cove Amphitheater. I'm going to leave a stack of flyers for the church office. Please come out, meet people, get connected to the community. It's a fun day. I promise you, people are doing cartwheels and wearing purple capes with tons of flowers in their hand. It's a positive day, a positive experience, but also to just get to know more people. But you guys are not alone in this process, and we're always here. That's my personal card right there, so you could feel free to call, email, use the helpline as well, and also all of this is confidential as well. So if you're not ready to make that step personally in your community yet, you can make that step with us first, and then when you get more comfortable, then you could express more help. So we're always here for you guys, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again.